Good afternoon, Quasar Markets Live. This is your host, Howard Hondo Greenberg, here with our 2 o'clock Quasar Market Live technicals with the pros. It's the time of the day that we're going to start to break down every day. Myself and others that spend a lot of time and years learning technical analysis, we'll start to take a look at charts for you. It will be somewhat interactive where we'll take a look on our YouTube chat and so forth. If you've got a symbol you want me to take a look at, please go ahead and ask. I have some ready to go here already today. Of course, I think we've got to start with QQQ index for the NASDAQ here, Invesco's QQQ Trust. As you can see, this one I want to start on the 3-minute chart here down. Whoops, did the wrong thing there. The 3-minute chart here. So let's take a look at it from a scalping view and what's been going on today. You can see right here, early this morning around 9:50 or so, it broke back through the VWAP, which is the volume weighted average position, which tends to be a big mover in the world of scalping and zero DTAs. Once it broke through that, we can see it just continued to rise, and it stayed well above it all the day as we've ridden up pretty much straight through it with a pretty good view. I will mention that these green lines that you see that break down, this is what's called a super guppy or a guppy. It is a basis of many exponential moving averages that are put together, and it gives a very good sort of visual interpretation of what's going on in the market. So you can sort of see when you can ride up or when to ride up the wave or ride down the wave. It's one that I really like for short-term trading. So again, what I'm usually looking for here, if I actually hide that though for 1 second, just so that we can see the VWAP here. So the VWAP in this case, the green line on the bottom, green line on the top, or the upper range and the bottom range based on a standard deviation from the VWAP. And like I said, you can see this sucker has broken through. It challenged it earlier. This morning it broke through it right around 9, almost 10 a.m. And then it has worked like a charm. And what you can see here is you can let it play through the first time. When it came back, so maybe it broke through the VWAP here, as I said, and you might have missed out on this first move up, right? But what we're going to notice is that's okay, because even if you had missed out on that first one, that capped out right about at the 485.22 spot, right? When it retraced almost exactly to the VWAP again and bounced up. So for a lot of people, they would have looked for, myself being one of them sometimes, all depends on what I'm looking at the day, looked for a secondary move. Once it broke through that, you could have entered. And again, it wasn't much of a difference if you really look at what that price range difference would have been. Because if we measure on that first move up, we can see it was about a 0.72 change. If we had broken in on the second move, we would have come in when it broke here, and we would have waited till it got about here. Actually, a 0.74 move. So we would have seen, waiting for it to retest and give you that secondary push today would have given you even more of a profit. Now, if you rode it all the way, of course, you would have had it, but a lot of people would have looked to exit or set a stop loss. What you would have seen from a lot of people, they would have came in, as across the VWAP. Once it got successfully through the top of the VWAP upper range, which is again a standard deviation from the VWAP, usually what you tend to do there is you look to put a stop loss back in at the VWAP. So that person would have either A, if they were really good when they saw the reversal here, would have, maybe cashed out. So somewhere in about a 0.72, to a half a point move. So pretty good move there, especially since a lot of people to play this, you could have played a zero DTA or a tomorrow expiring, which would be what I would recommend. A tomorrow expiring option would have been the way that I would have played that. So, we see that. Let me get rid of these drawings. And that is on the short term. Still looks positive. Still doing it. Again, I would be in this trade unless it dropped below 485.08 right now. And then I'd have a stop loss to get out. A couple of things there. It would also be the bottom of the linear regression, too, on that short-term 3-minute chart. So that would be a really good spot that I'd be looking at. I think it could test that support level, but if it broke below it, I would look to exit on a short-term trade there. As we break out, look at the hourly chart. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. I have the hourly chart here in that top right. We will expand that out a little bit here to take a look at that. Again, we're looking at QQQ. Wow, that's a great looking chart here. So first things we want to point out, you can see the gap from open this morning. So, you always have the fear, right? Is it going to fill the gap? So that would be to the downside, one of the things you look at. But as we can see, it's just broken out here. I will point out at the top of the linear regression on the hourly. So we might see a little bit of sell-off here. Volume has been stepping down on the hourly since 10 a.m. So we could see a little bit of loss of volume. We sometimes see that. We sometimes see what we call the power hour take off here about 2:33 o'clock. So it could go either way. Here, and if you're using the hourly as sort of your trading guide on more of a swing trade, I'd be watching personally that 10 MA here. That's what that yellow line is. It's been following it up, as you can see, since 7 o'clock Wednesday night. So it's been nicely working up using that. So that would be what I'd be looking at right here as my support. This might start to cross up. Over here, it would probably start to bottom out if this was to start to trade sideways. So that's what I'd be looking at there. And again, what a day the QQQ is having, up over 3%. Traders, definitely investors, everybody liking what they heard yesterday and it moving up. On the daily chart is next, so more of a long-term view or longer-term view of what's going on in the QQQ. Here what I've got up for us on the chart is a price channel. And what a price channel does is sort of tracks highs and lows, high of the last high, low of the last low, and it adjusts sort of from there, so you can sort of see how it works there. It's like a sort of play on Bollinger and, standard deviations, but a little different. I like it a lot for daily charts to look for areas, especially if you're dealing like we are now with sort of a runaway gapper to the north side here. What do we look at and where will it stop? And what you can see is it's pretty much pegged right at the top of the price channel right now, at that 486.13, got as high as 486.23. And where do we get that from? That really came from the highs that we saw on August 22nd and Wednesday the 21st of August. We also see that was sticky back in here in July 22nd, July 23rd. And if we move back, that same area was sticky here in June. So it's shown some, at least 1, 2, 3 levels where that's been historical resistance right now. In fact, we all know that this was the all-time high on the QQQs. So basically this was all sort of uncharted territory. So what we're going to see here is it only was able to get that real strength actually going into July 4th, and that's when it took off. So that's what I'd look at here. Again, a sort of important zone right where it's at now. If we do retrace, again, what you're looking at for me is sort of the area here where we saw support pretty much play out in mid-June, where we saw it play out a bunch at the end of July. And then what sort of became resistance, we broke through it once, but what truly sort of started our downfall from here at August 23rd. So as long as we stay above that, we still stay in that nice bullish view there, in my opinion, on the Qs. So that's what we are looking at with the NASDAQ currently. From there, let's take a look at the SPY. SPY did hit an all-time new high today. So you gotta love that. It is seeing a little bit more of a sell-off here, starting at about 145 today. And you can see the last 5 or 6 minutes really taking a little bit of a hit. Again, now that would be a spot right here. We'll see how this plays out. Let me blow this up, the 3-minute chart here. You know, when we take a look at that, like I had spoken about on the previous chart using, whoops, it blew up the day chart there. Sorry about that. You know, when you successfully get this nice move through the VWAP, using it as support, getting above the top of the VWAP, seeing it act as support, that's where I would be looking here. Any break below this 571.78 for me, I would trigger a stop loss on a 3-minute chart, you know, and see from there. But, you know, so far it's holding up. Again, that's what I'm watching, top of the VWAP range here. And it's bouncing up a little bit. So, again, you can see. And, again, if we look at that, our morning started. I'm just trying to get us right to 9 a.m. So 9:30. So right on open, we broke below the VWAP. So now you're watching it. If you're going to play a play to the upside, you're seeing what happens as it enters back into the range. So again, you know, they don't always work like this, but when we look at this, broke through for the first time right here, 10-12, right? So you can either choose to start your position there, especially if you're going for that quick scalp on that morning pump that we've had lately. You would have started yourself here, and you would have had the opportunity at least about a 0.36 profit at the most there. But what we're going to see again is if you have waited for it to come back, test again, break through, test, and here's where I would have gone in at about 11:54. You know, you'd be looking at almost a half point that it moved up from that point. And again, you'd be sitting here saying, okay, it hasn't done a 50% retracement, staying above that. I'm liking where I'm at. If I'm scalping this, I'm looking at it again. Well, that doesn't sound like a big move, a half point here. Keep in mind that you would have been playing this using an option on a weekly expiration, and those things move pretty rapidly there. And you're working on 100 counts. So that's the SPY on the short term. On the hourly chart, again, SPY on the hourly chart had been in a level of consolidation. If I get to the right spot. There we go. You know, really between this 560 and 563 areas where it spent most of its time, you know, over the last week or so. But again, gapped up above, and where you sort of knew you had a runaway going here, when it gapped above and broke above this previous high over here again. you had to say we're gonna see things that we're gonna show some strength. Again, riding up the 10 MA on the hourly chart nicely up towards the top of the linear regression. So we're going to see what gives out first. Does the 10 MA on the hourly give out, or can we break through the top of the linear regression? Again, hourly starting to break south, and we're having our first negative volume hour where price is also moving down with the volume being a little bit less. So let's see what the day has to give us there. Bitcoin, what a day, man. Bitcoin has been on fire. We talked about it as it approached 60, that it would see resistance there. It did. It took a little while, got rejected, as you can see on the daily chart here back Friday and Saturday last week. Came up, tried to break through it, broke through it briefly on Tuesday, but finished again below that area. And then really the last 2 days and kicking off with Powell's talk yesterday and the FOMC decision has moved up nicely. So now you got to say, okay, Howard, you had said we'll probably pause at that 58 level where we paused, and then we went down, retraced a little bit, made our next move up. I called 60 as the spot to watch. It retraced from there, now making its next move up here to 63. So we're continuing on this move up to see the higher highs and the higher lows. And again, if you look, that was basically here. It came up to 58, broke back down to that 55 level. We went up again. We got up to that 60 level. We broke back down to that 57, 58 level. So we've been seeing what? Higher highs, higher lows. So that's what we're going to keep in mind. If we can continue to see that happen, it's great. The next big price channel that we're looking at here really isn't to 65, 247. So, I think we're going to see resistance here anytime we get through 64, and we're really in that, and it's going to be tough to close above 63. So that's going to be what I'm looking at. Can we close above 62,844? So I want to close above where we closed, or where the wick started here, on August 24th. So that's what I'm looking at here. Can we get above that? Can we stay above this key area? And you can see if I sort of blow that up here. And why am I saying that? That was our key resistance here back at the end of June. You can see it was our key support here where our wicks all sort of landed and jumped up at the end of July to where we rejected at the beginning of August. We did get through it once, but broke back down. And it's where we're struggling to get through now. So as long as we stay above that, we stay bullish right now, and we start to target, 65 as the next price range. You also got to be wary here on a daily chart. Let's take a look at a retracement. If we start the move here from Friday, and bring it out, you see that you've got that level, the first one, 60,984 would be what you're looking at on the daily chart there as your first level of retracement to keep an eye on. And anything from me that bounces above that 0.5 at that 58.096 keeps us in a nice bullish stance. So, Bitcoin looking pretty good there. RSI is starting to move up here on the daily. With Bitcoin, though, RSI, it doesn't care about RSI very much. It will continue to ride up. So, definitely something to keep in mind. Bitcoin don't care about RSI as much as others do. But, everything looking nice here. You got gold, tried to make it above a new all-time high, but rejected. So you got to look at that 2,600 Seems to be a pretty big psychological and technical spot for it right now. So that's what you're looking at there. Steve's talked about silver, silver, silver. He did say he's going to take a little profit here. You can't really argue. When you look at the daily chart, you can see sort of along that trend line here that you have from the top of the linear regression, all that. Makes sense. I can see what he's saying. He does feel in the long term that you will see a run up to 50, but, you know, more covering right now and looking at a little bit again. If we pull up the daily chart and start to play around a little bit with the Fibonacci's, and we say this run really started on August 7th, and that's where we're at today. You know, you could definitely expect to see something back towards that, you know, 29, 28.70 level and not be surprised. So I think that's what the big man is looking at when he talks about that. VIX back above 17, so a little bit of volatility picking up here across the afternoon. A little bit, so that means we got a little bit of selling coming in. I mean, though, if you look down in the bottom right corner at that heat map, it's pretty green overall. A couple others I wanted to point out still. Alibaba we talked about this morning. You know, with the expectation that China will follow and have a rate cut on Friday. In anticipation of that, we saw a pretty big gap up by a few of the Japanese bigger names, Baba, Baidu, and JD up 6%. So that's the winner so far. And Neo, which is up about 6%. So Chinese are all getting a rise. What you don't think about there, but that is also getting a little bit of an extra boost from that, is Tesla. So let's take a look at Tesla here. We always say, do not fade the Musk. And as you can see, it's just booming here, back up, hit as high as 244.24 earlier today. Has plateaued. That's one that you haven't seen really much of an upward move since, you know, about noontime. It's been more sideways than what we looked at with anything so far. Let's take a look at the 3-minute chart here. I'm going to put the super guppy back in for myself. Can see that the bluish side of it's starting to compress again. For those of you that are asking, that's actually usually a pretty good time here So again, I'd be looking at that 243.15. As long as we stay above that, I'd be bullish here on the short term on Tesla. So anything above that. Yeah, 243.09. Staying above that, the top of the VWAP session would keep me happy. Look at the hourly here. On the hourly, I tend to look at these MAs right now. And what you can see here, just for those that don't know, I keep up 3 charts. I keep them tied to the same symbol on this screen. I do have a few different screens that I use, but I use this one a lot for stocks especially. And what I like about it is, you know, I can quickly snap back and forth from them. But I keep a daily chart up here on the left, and I will move this to the weekly because I tend to use the same indicators there. So that's what I like. That one I'll use weekly or daily on. This one here is more of my midterm look. So what I'll do here is I will switch off sometimes. Right now I keep it on the hourly, mostly on the hourly, but I'll go to the 4-hour. 4-hour, especially for crypto. You can see that I've marked up the 4-hour here on Tesla previously. Is one that I use a lot for crypto is the 4 hours, because there's basically 6 sessions in a day. Crypto trades 24/7, so you got to look at it a little bit differently. So again, and this one I have MA and I have support and resistance zones. that I tend to use. Linear regression I use in all time frames. Volume in general I keep on all time frames. I think it's important across all of them. So that's what we're usually looking at there. I do like a 2 to 4 hour because you're basically breaking the 8-hour trading day into two different views. You can see what you did, what your morning looked like, what your night looked like, what your morning looked like, what your night looked like. So works out pretty well in my opinion there. And then lastly, I already showed you a little bit more of a breakdown. We were looking at QQQs when it comes to you know, the way that I look at short term, and I can use a 3 minute. I'll use a 1 minute here. 1 minute really is only on, you know, Tesla definitely could be a 1 minute that there's enough information to go, you know, but you got to be careful because once you get out of the big players, if I go to even like Constellation, you can see how much it's gappy. Doesn't give you as good of a look because they don't have the volume for it. So, you know, you need stuff that have volume. NVIDIA is a good one. It's definitely got enough volume to keep you happy there. So that's one that I use a lot. So speaking of, let's take a look at what NVIDIA is doing here. NVIDIA, I've been watching, you know, where do I think we run out of steam here on this nice run up? I think that you have a pretty decent trend line here. The one thing I always do is never click into the screen first. You know, starting back here in, you know, late June, you've got this trend line that comes through the bump that we saw up in, you know, that second week of July, and then the area that we went up to in mid-August. Until we can break out, until we prove that we can break through that trend line right there, it's definitely one that, again, if I was trading NVIDIA on more of a swing trade, where I'd be looking to sell into pressure there if it came up. RSI on the daily, we can see it did a good job of bouncing up from that, you know, 50 level or so, which is the midpoint. You know, once it breaks up off of that, it looks like it's done a good job. Today on the short-term chart, it's one that has started to turn over. You can see it started to look neutral on the super guppy here, and that's what's nice about the super guppy. It will make mistakes. In other words, if you look, or it's not always the right indicator on this nice run up that it had, you know, and this is a minute chart. Let's put that to the 3 minute because we're not really talking 1 minute scalps here, so let's keep it so you wouldn't have seen it. So see, that worked out perfectly. So if you look here, since 8 o'clock this morning, you know, if you sort of got into this, or if you waited for it when it tested and then took off in the 9:30, you know, one thing you'd be looking at is how's it performing here. Well, once you sort of got over here to 206, you can see that we're starting to get a more neutral sense out of the super guppy here. That also coincides with that top of the VWAP, and you can see we broke below it. So again, I would have been out of that trade at that point. Did break back through it here, and again, sometimes I'll look and say, okay, we're broken back through it. Let's play it again. But you know, now you're worrying about with NVIDIA, can it get back across this 119.45, which is the top of the VWAP session on the north. So those are the things to keep an eye on when you're trading. But NVIDIA, you know, hit as high as 119.66 there. So if you've been playing NVIDIA for the swing the last few days, it got down as low as 113 and then made this move. That's a nice little move up. A couple of other things I was looking at here. Oh, they're on the other one. Darden, if you were with us this morning, we talked about Darden on the open. Even before the open, 9 o'clock, they got their earnings reports came in. We said what we were looking for once we saw it. It actually went down on the news and then shot up. So Darden, if you were listening to us when it took this dump down to like 155 or so, in that range. Steve and I both talked about that it was a place to take a look. They announced their partnership with Uber. You know, it doesn't sound like a big deal, but it is. You know, the Olive Gardens has such a huge amount of them. When you all of a sudden add delivery to all those stores, you know, if you watched, and this is Darden's doing this out of their playbook again, because they made a move similar to this back in COVID, where they took all of their Maggiano restaurants and at that point decided that they would make them into serve wings out of them and do that with DoorDash, and it was a huge bump for their business. So definitely right. It's not the first time we've seen a smart move. Lunar, you got to take a look at that LUNR. You know, it has just gone parabolic. It gapped yesterday after they announced the huge contract with NASA, and that sucker has just been continuing to go up here. Short-term chart, you can see it's actually turning over a little bit here. It'll be interesting to see. Does it use the midpoint on the short-term linear regression to turn around? And if it drops below, this is about the spot. It's at a tough spot because you can see this is where it reversed on Tuesday. Ran out of steam from there, so it is falling below it. So Lunar could be seeing a little bit of weakness here as we talked about getting into the afternoon. Not seeing it though across the indices. Some other ones we talked about this morning, speaking of food service, DoorDash, which had gotten an upgrade from the analyst this morning. You can see that stock moved up pretty nicely here, up almost 3.5%. iPower, we talked about that this morning, up about 4.48%. You can see though, after we talked about that, it actually took a drop down before coming back up. Mobileye, we've been talking about that. Mobileye, Israeli autonomous driving. Intel, their major partner and shareholder, has announced that they are not going to divest out of the company, that they're going to hold that stock. It's been moving up since, up about 17.48 here. And you can see another one that's nicely, every time it comes through that compression area to where it's at right now, it's bounced. This is one that, for me, looks real attractive right here on that short term. On the other side, we talked about Progeny. They are involved in insurance related to fertility care, and they found out that their largest customer that's responsible for about 12% of revenue is no longer going to offer that service to their employees, and that stock is down 32% now. It was down 25 earlier. Another winner that, if you've been here listening to Quasar Markets Live over the last few days, we've been talking the Children's Place. We've been talking it up all week since Monday. You know, and Monday it was trading at about $11, now up at $16.57. So one that we have been talking about on a regular, almost daily basis there. Another loser today was a miss on earnings from Steelcase. They actually did okay on their earnings. It was the forward guidance they gave. They missed slightly on revenue, had a slight beat on EPS, but they actually just gave, didn't give good forward guidance, and they've been getting hurt ever since. We'll say most of the pump and dumpers have run out of steam here. Man, that SGN that we had mentioned this morning, that sucker just continued to go up. Got as high as up like 300 and something percent up before now dropping down only up 257%. That is definitely losing steam here. Anything dropping below that 10 MA on the hourly, and watch out below, because you can see on a daily that chart is not good. They did actually have some news that I saw, and that was that the Cashman Group, aka Swifty Global, why is that doing that to me? Had signed a binding letter of intent to be acquired from Signing Day Sports. So people don't seem to like that move. I don't know what that is, and it says here's a little bit more on it. It says Signing Day Sports shares are trading higher after the company inked a binding term sheet to acquire 95 to 99% of Dare Cashmere Group holding. As per the deal, Signing Day Sports will issue its securities to Swifty's controlling stockholders. Signing Day Sports will not make any cash payment there, so it's an all-stock deal. CEO James Gibbon from Signing Day Sports will be the CEO of both. And this is a software development company that they're buying. So that's been moving all day. GLMD, one that we talked about with Charlie on Tuesday, right? We talked about that when it pumped up on Tuesday. It made another move up today. This is one, though, that goes to what we talked about. Whenever they make their next jumps, they're not almost never as high. In fact, it was about as high. It was right about the 50%. But man, that one jumped too. XCure, another one Charlie was talking about on Tuesday. That one jumped, and you can see he was talking about it on Tuesday after it gapped up to this $2 level. Went as high as 6 today before turning around. And when you look at the volume, I mean, normal average volume is about 2 million shares a day, and that's only after it's had a few good pumps where it saw some crazy volume. 16.73 million shares changed hands today. So pretty big move there. That is about all I have for us this afternoon. You know, the question is, are we going to keep this momentum? You do see some selling across everything right now a little bit. Not unexpected to take a little profit. And again, Quasar Market fans, please don't be afraid to take profits as you are trading. Bears live, bulls lives, but pigs get slaughtered. That is our saying here. Again, for Quasar Markets, I am so happy to share these tidbits with you. My name is Howard Hondo Greenberg, and I'm the host of Quasar Markets Live. See you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. with the man himself, Big Beat Stephen Orr.